Good evening and welcome to week number 2 of the Science for Alaska lecture series. Tonight we're going to be hearing from Ph.D. candidate Sarah Clement and postdoctoral fellow Joanna Young. They'll be talking about their program, Inspiring Girls Expeditions Alaska, Teaching Science and Art with Nature's Guidance. And I just wanted to note that this past Saturday makes this really timely. This past Saturday was the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So that's pretty good. I also want to say that just personally, I have a daughter who's a freshman here at UAF, and she's not into science and engineering, but I can tell you that when she was in junior high and high school, my wife and I looked around for a whole bunch of different programs, and the value of programs like what you're going to hear about tonight is just, it's fabulous, it's super important, and for the programs that our daughter was in, really helped her find her way. So I hope you'll hear a lot of good info tonight. I know you will. I'm Rod Boyce from the UAF Geophysical Institute Public Information Office. Before we go much further tonight, I want to acknowledge the Alaska Native nations upon whose ancestral lands we are located tonight and where our campuses reside. In Fairbanks, our Trothiata campus is located on the ancestral lands of the Dene people of the lower Tanana River. We're very happy to be back having these lectures in person. Last week was our first one after 2 years of going online only. We love our online audience, high online audience there. But it's nice to have people in front of us here tonight, so we're glad you're here. The lecture series is in its 31st year, and we'll be providing a science talk every Tuesday through March 7th. The lecture series this year is sponsored by the Geophysical Institute, the Triple Horn family, the Alaska Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research, you may know it as EPSCoR, Vic and Vicki Weinstein, and Lifewater Engineering Company. So a big thank you to all of those sponsors who are so important to make this event happen. We want to add a little bit tonight about EPSCoR, since they have a connection to the program you're going to hear about tonight. EPSCoR also supports several of the programs described in the lecture. EPSCoR is a National Science Foundation funded program that aims to build research capacity in Alaska. The Inspiring Girls program is part of Alaska EPSCoR's DEW team, that's D-E-W, which focuses on building capacity for Alaska in terms of diversity, education, and workforce development. Expeditions are programs of the International Arctic Research Center, and EPSCoR provides financial support in the form of staff salaries and covering expedition costs each year. So an extra special thanks to EPSCoR. I do have, and if you're going to be coming back to our lectures in the coming weeks here, you're going to hear these over and over, but these are the announcements that we make each time. If you have a cell phone, please make sure it's off. Mine is, or on silent. We don't want to disturb the presenters tonight. The lecture is being recorded. The video will be available for viewing online at the GI's website and YouTube channel. Restrooms are located outside the auditorium. There's one to the right and then several down the hall to the left. Emergency exit out the back of the room, and regular exits to the left and right as you came in. You were given a piece of paper that has a survey on how you heard about the lectures, and we'd love you to fill that out. On the opposite side, you will find a spot to write questions you may have for the speaker. There's a QR code you can scan to view live captions on any device, any smartphone. The formal lecture will last about 45 minutes, and there will be time for some of those questions afterward. I'm going to run over here for a bit so that you can hear me well. There we go. So we're going to have two folks, myself and our microphone fairy, Ray, over here. We'll have our microphones, and we'll be on either aisle here. So raise your hand, and we'll bring you a microphone. And it's important that you ask a question in the microphone so our online audience can hear. You can also write your question on the back of that slip, and we'll be happy to read it for you. Okay, with those out of the way, now I would like to introduce Dr. Laura Connor, who's going to introduce our presenters tonight. Dr. Connor is the Alaska EPSCoR Fire and Ice Director of Diversity, Education, and Workforce Development, and she is a research professor at the Geophysical Institute. Dr. Connor?
Thank you, Rob. There you go. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out on Valentine's Day. It's really exciting to see everybody. And I'm really, really pleased to be introducing Sarah and Joanna. I've known them both for some time now. In fact, I sat on Joanna Young's Ph.D. committee, and I'm now on Sarah Clement's Ph.D. committee. And so I work closely with them. And I know the care and love that they put into these programs. They really give their all to these programs. And they also care a lot about documenting it in a really rigorous way. And so they conduct educational research on the outcomes of the programs. And you're going to hear a lot about what they do in a few minutes, but I want to give them a proper formal introduction so you know a little bit more about these gals before they talk to you about what they do. So Sarah Clement grew up in Seattle, Washington on the unceded lands of the Duwamish peoples. She learned to hike, camp, and canoe in the lush forests and clear lakes of the Pacific Northwest, developing a deep love for the natural world and planting the seed for her future career. Sarah earned her BA in Environmental Studies at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and her MED in Environmental Education at Western Washington's University in Bellingham, Washington. 4 days after graduating with her Master's in Education in 2018, Sarah moved to Fairbanks, having never visited before, which I think is very brave, to begin her work with Inspiring Girls Expeditions Alaska. In addition to her work with Inspiring Girls, as you heard, she's currently pursuing a Ph.D. in Natural Resources and Sustainability at UAF. Her research focuses on youth, learning outcomes, and community and citizen science. And Joanna Young, Dr. Joanna Young grew up in Ontario, Canada, and has lived in Fairbanks for 13 years now. Joanna received her bachelor's degrees in astrophysics and philosophy of science at the University of British Columbia, and her master's and Ph.D. in geophysics from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. She's currently a postdoctoral fellow and the director of the Inspiring Girls Expeditions Alaska through the International Arctic Research Center. Joanna's studies span physical and social sciences, and they focus on how Alaska glaciers are losing mass in climate change and the impacts of Inspiring Girls expeditions on participants. Joanna is an obsessive skier, a mom to a 19-month-old toddler, and also the 2022 recipient of the Alaska Conservation Foundation's Award for Excellence in Environmental Education. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to these wonderful gals to talk about what they do.
Thank you. Oh, you can take that. We've got them. Thank you so much, Laura. That was such a wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's really nice to see people in person. Hello, everyone online. As Laura said, we'll be talking about Inspiring Girls Expeditions Alaska today, teaching science and art with nature's guidance. And just by way of getting us started, we wanted to acknowledge up front some of our biggest supporters and funding agencies. And as Rod mentioned, the Alaska EPSCoR program is one of our biggest supporters, particularly the Fire and Ice program, which is running right now. And we're also sponsored by the Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center, and they are a USGS and University of Alaska partnership that focuses on climate adaptation and producing research and tools and education for communities and stakeholders to be able to adapt to climate change. And I wanted to introduce myself a little bit more beyond what Laura mentioned as well. For those who aren't able to see me, my physical description is that I'm a short, pretty pregnant woman who is wearing a gray blazer and dark pants, and I have red curly hair in a ponytail. as Laura said, I'm the program director for Inspiring Girls Expeditions, Alaska. I have a background in glaciology. I'm also doing some education research as well, and an environmental educator. But beyond sort of the formal side of my background, I'm Canadian. I grew up in Ontario. We had proper winters there, although nothing quite like what we experience here. But I did grow up loving the cold, loving wintertime. And also, both of my parents were teachers and in the public school system. And so I think instilled in me a real sense of commitment to education very early on. And the way that I found my path into science and the outdoors was because my parents were public school teachers, we had summers off in Ontario. And so during July and August, our family would pick up and move to our family cottage. That's what we call them in Ontario. They're not cabins, they're cottages. And this was in Lake Country, Ontario. And we were just essentially free, my sisters and I, to run around free in the woods. And so we did that. We were just feral for 2 months. And along the way, I got really obsessed with learning about the natural environment, learning about the trees and bugs and leaves, and using all of the field guidebooks we had in the cottage to try to categorize and identify everything. And so it was this childhood experience that I think really brought me to love both nature and the outdoors.
Hey everyone, is this on?
Maybe not.
How about now? Good? We tested this.
Should we do this microphone?
Yep, I'll do it. Thank you so much. No problem. It's never a presentation without a little technical difficulty. Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Clement. I'm the program coordinator of Inspiring Girls Expeditions Alaska, as has been mentioned. I am also an education researcher. I'm currently doing my Ph.D. in science education here at UAF. Oops, I'm going to set that down. I'm also an outdoor enthusiast like Joanna. I've had many childhood experiences growing up in the outdoors, lots of experiences getting to play in nature and see myself belonging in these spaces. And I had eventually decided that I loved it so much that I wanted to make outdoor education a career. So after college, I had the financial privilege and many other privileges to be able to take a barely paid internship at an outdoor education company to kind of kickstart my career in outdoor education, which has morphed into a career in environmental and science education as well. So Joanna's and my stories about our pathways into outdoors and education might sound familiar to some of you in the audience, but they are by no means a universal experience. We know from research that many girls and people of marginalized gender identities face all kinds of barriers to science and outdoor recreation. So this is where Inspiring Girls Expeditions comes in. And before I go any further, you might be wondering why we have an asterisk after girls. That's our way of indicating that our program is for girls and youth of marginalized gender identities, including transgender, agender, two-spirit, intersex, non-binary, and genderqueer youth. You'll see that we use the asterisk throughout our presentation. So there's plenty of research that shows many girls are interested in science and the outdoors at a young age, but tend to drift away as they grow older. Our expeditions provide an immersive experience for young women to try on new identities as scientists and outdoors people and see themselves as people who enjoy and belong in these spaces. And one of our primary program goals is to increase the diversity of women in field science and the outdoors. And we know that increasing diversity in spaces like field science and the outdoors is good for increasing creativity, for increasing things like problem solving, and we also believe it's ethically the right thing to do. So that's one of the main drivers of our program. So in a nutshell, we run 12-day backcountry science and art programs for youth, who we will talk about shortly. Our mission is to empower young women to lead and succeed through science, art, and outdoor exploration. And we do that by working with instructors who are all professionals in their fields. Our program model, which has been peer-reviewed through several research studies, is modeled on authentic field science expeditions. And like I said, all led by early career professionals. And most importantly, our programs are free for all participants, regardless of their ability to pay.
And I'll share a little bit about the history of how Inspiring Girls Expeditions has come to be. Some of you may recognize the name Girls on Ice, more so than the name Inspiring Girls Expeditions. That was our very first program, and it started in 1999. The founder and director of Inspiring Girls Expeditions, Erin Pettit, started the Girls on Ice program in Washington State in 1999. And when she came up to UAF as a professor in the glaciology department, she mentored 3 graduate students, including myself, to start a Girls on Ice Alaska program. And Girls on Ice Alaska was the second ever expedition of Inspiring Girls Expeditions. And since then, it's just been spreading like wildfire. And we have so many different programs under so many different titles and different host institutions now. So this is a schematic of all of the global branches now of Inspiring Girls Expeditions. And we have a lot of partners in a lot of different places. And what we're going to focus on today is here at UAF, Inspiring Girls Expeditions, Alaska. The 3 expeditions that we host currently every single summer are located in these 3 spots around the state. And so the little tree icon shows where we run our Girls in the Forest program, which is on the Upper Chena River, just east of town, so probably familiar to a lot of us. The blue snowflake is our Girls on Ice Alaska program, and that is on the Gulkana Glacier, which is in the eastern Alaska Range. And lastly, the Girls on Water program is shown with the fish icon. It's on the Kenai near Homer, and they go around Kachemak Bay. And here's a little more about each of those 3 expeditions. So Girls on Ice Alaska, which was, again, our first sort of flagship program, is a glacier mountaineering program. And so the mode of travel is glacier mountaineering and traveling on a rope team, wearing crampons and navigating around crevasses. And the science focus there is on glaciology, climate change, and the alpine ecosystem. And Girls on Water was the next program we started up here at UAF. And it is a sea kayaking-based expedition. And they focus on the marine sort of intertidal zone, the coastal ecosystem, and marine biology. And then finally, the Girls in the Forest expedition is our newest, and it's been running now for 2 years. And it is a pack rafting and hiking expedition. And so every participant gets their own pack raft to navigate the waters of the Upper Chena. And the science focus there is the boreal forest and forest ecology and wildfire ecology.
So all of our expeditions follow the same basic format over the course of 12 days. On the first day, everyone arrives in Fairbanks or Homer. Everyone's nervous. It's always pretty quiet. We meet. We start to get to know each other. We pack for the expedition. And then for days 2 and 3, we're heading out into the field, starting to get acquainted with the landscape around us. doing some introduction to science and art. And again, we bond very quickly, but the first few days we intentionally start getting to know each other just to make everyone comfortable as a new team of 12 people coming from all different places. The middle of our expedition, days 4 through 9, are really the heart of the expedition. Our participants split up into small groups of 3 to conduct their own science and art projects. We go farther and farther from our base camp, exploring the landscape, getting to know what's all around us. But all good things do come to an end. So on day 10, everyone travels back to town, again, Fairbanks or Homer, depending on that expedition. There's a chance to clean up a little gear. Everyone gets to shower for the first time in 10 days, always a very big highlight with the team. And maybe you also get to see your cell phone for the first time in 10 days. And day 11, our last full day of the expedition, is a really remarkable feat of synthesizing all the data that the participants collected while out in the field, putting it all together, and then by the evening, by 5 o'clock, giving a public presentation, sharing stories from the expedition, telling the public what they found on their research projects. And then there's a big celebration in the evening to celebrate everything that's gone on for the last week and a half. And then day 12 is a morning of wrap-up and reflection activities, people exchanging contact information and whatnot, and heading home. So we wanted to talk a little bit about who our participants are, who comes to these programs. All of our participants are 16 to 18 years old, and as I mentioned, we're open to girls and youth from marginalized or gender identities that have been historically underrepresented in science and the outdoors. When selecting our participants, we aim to build teams that are diverse in geographic, cultural, and socioeconomic backgrounds, and we're also looking for a diversity of interests, previous experiences, and personalities. So we're really aiming to build teams with a wide array of experiences so that all of our participants and instructors can teach each other and learn from each other while out in the field. We do primarily accept Alaska residents, and so we do have participants that come up from the lower 48, but we prioritize Alaska applicants. And we have 9 spots on each of our expeditions. So when we run 3 expeditions, we serve about 27 youth per summer. And I'm very proud to say that we've served 151 participants on our programs here in Alaska since 2012, with just over half, or 83 of those participants, coming from 35 communities across Alaska.
And part of the way that we reach out to all of our different participants is through a really unique application process that we're pretty proud of, and that's quite different than application processes to a lot of other extracurricular activities. We don't ask anything about grades or academics. We don't focus at all on past achievements or anything that participants may have already done in their lives, already achieved in their lives. Instead, the questions we ask are short personal essay questions, and they are designed to get to know the person and what they're interested in and what they're passionate about. And so we ask questions like, what is a typical day like for you? You know, what is a typical weekday, and how about a weekend day? And you can learn a lot about their lives through that kind of question. We also ask, what is a science topic that excites you, to try to get a sense of what their interests might be and what expedition they might be best suited for. And we ask similar questions about their art passions as well, and their outdoor experience. And we also ask for some recommendations from teachers, and I have teacher kind of in quotes there because it can be anyone who serves a sort of mentorship or teacher role in that participant's life. So it doesn't have to be a school teacher. It can be a caretaker or you know, someone who is teaching lessons to them in some form. So we can learn a lot about participants from what we hear from their teacher recommendations too. And One of the most unique aspects of our expeditions is that we focus very strongly on removing financial barriers to access. So we are completely tuition-free for participants. And the reason we do this is that the literature tells us that financial barriers to access are a big part of the reason why we don't see equal representation of all different kinds of people participating in extracurriculars like science after school activities, or certainly outdoor recreation activities, which are very expensive, typically cost thousands of dollars and require a lot of really technical, specialized equipment that people just typically don't have access to and can't afford. And so we are trying to completely remove that financial barrier to access as much as possible. And we do that by making the program tuition-free, so there's no registration cost, nothing at all. We provide all of the equipment, and so we have a really, really extensive gear library that's taken us years to get together, where all the participants can take out whatever they need, from base layers to socks to pack rafts to crampons for the glacier expedition. So really everything that they need is provided. Of course, when they come into our care, all lodging and food is provided, completely taken care of. And we offer travel scholarships for any participant who requests it. So it's not a scholarship application in the traditional sense of something that could be denied. It's if you ask for it, you get it. And what we know from the literature is that this really helps to bring in more diverse participants than we would see otherwise. And we're really proud of this fact, and it's something that makes us very rare in the outdoor and science extracurricular program world.
Great. I wanted to take a few slides to talk about our instructors, the people who make these expeditions happen. We absolutely could not do it without them. So each of our expeditions has an instructor team of 3 to 4. All of these instructors are professionals in their fields, early career researchers, artists, and outdoor guides. And then we also have an on-site coordinator who's kind of our in-town logistics person for each expedition. Every instructor comes with their own expertise and unique experiences, and that makes each expedition really unique in terms of the curriculum, the questions that the participants explore. Just as an example, for Girls on Ice, we've had years where glaciologists are the scientists, and we've had years where oceanographers are the scientists, and exploring that connection between mountain or alpine glaciers and coastal ecosystems. So really unique every year. Each instructor gets to bring their own expertise to the curriculum, which is really special. And I will just put in a shameless plug that we are looking for instructors for 2023. So we're looking to round out some of our instructor teams. So if you're interested, there is a QR code here for our application. And it's also very easy to find on our website. So please feel free to come talk to us if you might be interested in instructing for this summer. I'm going to talk a little bit as well about the benefits for our early career instructors. So we intentionally work with folks who are early in their career to build a support network among these folks as they're just starting out. And teaching for Inspiring Girls provides a unique opportunity to gain experience in things like curriculum design, expedition logistics, and risk management, which many of these skills are things that our instructors are looking for as they go on in their career. Here at Inspiring Girls, we also host a variety of other professional development opportunities focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in all areas of our work. And instructors are encouraged to seek out other skill development opportunities elsewhere as well. We provide stipends for instructors to seek out these external training opportunities and bring back this knowledge to the Inspiring Girls community so that we all keep learning and growing together. And we just started this process of providing instructor stipends for external trainings about 3 years ago. And so far, we've been able to fund our instructors to attend skills clinics in pack rafting and sea kayaking, wilderness medicine training, and mental health first aid training as well, which it's been a wonderful experience for our instructors, and it's also really benefited our program as a whole. So we're very excited to be able to provide that for our instructors.
So our approach really has 3 core elements, and we're going to go into some detail telling you about those 3. Each expedition really works to blend together science, art, and the outdoors. And the way that we structure the 12 days together is that we really scaffold the learning experience so that participants are increasing their skills in each of these 3 different themes in parallel over the course of the whole 12 days. And so we start out really slowly and with lots of basic skills, just getting to know the landscape, getting to put on sort of our scientific goggles or putting on our artistic goggles, and slowly build up skills over the course of the 12 days. And for example, to follow along the art thread, the way that we do that over 12 days is we start by doing some really sort of straightforward observation activities, looking at the landscape, doing line drawings, trying to capture just in really simple shapes what the participants are seeing in front of them. And slowly we build up skills, incorporating a little bit more texture, a little bit more color, a little bit more in terms of different media and things that you can use actively in the field, watercolors and different kinds of paper and other sorts of natural found objects in the field too. And we build that up over 12 days such that at the end they might even be able to incorporate those art projects into their scientific presentations and present those to the public audience at the end. And so the goal here is that we really just want to build up skills slowly over 12 whole days. And we do that through a lot of instructor modeling at the beginning, having instructors sort of show how it's done and ask a lot of questions to get everyone in the right mindset about how you might go about doing this. And then progressively building more and more independence in the participants so they can take on these skills themselves. And so the first of the 3 sort of core elements is that we work very hard to make sure our participants get to experience what we call authentic field science. And so a lot of these participants will come to us never having experienced science outside of the classroom before or outside of the textbook. And they may have some sort of preconceived notions about what field science looks like or what scientists look like, and we work really hard to showcase what that actually looks like in the real world. And the research in science education shows us that the degree to which girls in particular will think of themselves as possibly pursuing science or being interested in science is related to whether or not they can see themselves in that role, whether or not they can identify as scientists and possibly see a future version of themselves conducting science. And so the way that we tap into that is by showcasing real field scientists. Our instructors are early career professionals who are amazing scientists and also real human beings with real lives and senses of humor and all of the sort of humanizing elements that I think help to break down what the stereotypical view might be of what a scientist looks like. And that helps serve as role models for the participants to better identify with. And then also we give the participants the opportunity to try on science themselves and to do so in a welcoming and supportive environment where they're encouraged to ask questions, any question that comes to mind, make observations, learn about the scientific process, make mistakes along the way because that's a real part of science. And so through showcasing all these aspects of what authentic field science really looks like, we're able to sort of tap into that part of our participants' lives where they may be able to envision themselves as scientists in the future. That's kind of how we structure things in terms of the science content. But let's turn to ask, what do the participants say about their experience with relative to the science content? Well, one quote is, working alongside other participants that were also passionate about learning and seeing how possible it is to do science has made the idea of studying it less intimidating. I got good advice and support for a future in this field and felt like there was space for people like me in science. And that's from one of this past summer's alumni on Girls on Water. And a second quote from a participant is, every day in the forest brought me to new revelations and changed my mind about things in both science and everyday life.
Great. So the second component of our three is the artistic inquiry component. So we work really hard to intentionally disrupt the notion that science and art are opposites. And participants get opportunities throughout the expedition to practice their art skills, to make detailed observations about the landscape around them, to inform their science questions, and to document what they're doing out in the field. Research shows us that teaching science and art together is one way to make science more accessible to people who might not otherwise be drawn to it. And we know that both art and science do actually require some of the same skills, such as the necessity of creative thinking and sharp observational skills. So by including art, this is one way that we can make science more relevant, more accessible to more young folks. And conversely, we have students who come in, participants who come in, who are really excited about the science and are convinced that they could never be artists. And many of them come back from the expedition saying, I drew in a journal for the first time, and it was fantastic. Like, I loved it. I want to go home and do nature journaling every day, or at least, on a more regular basis, which is always really, really gratifying and exciting to hear. So participants are encouraged to weave some sort of creative component into their science presentation at the end of the expedition, and this has gotten more and more. I guess creative is the best word for it, over the course of Inspiring Girls. And it's just very cool to see the data visualizations, the artistic data visualizations that participants come up with, the creative writing, the poems that people write to communicate their data. It's very, very encouraging to see. And I will also, similar to what Joanna just did, turn to our participants from last summer. So one of our Girls in the Forest participants said, "This program inspired me to do better when it comes to science communication and to include art more in my science." And a Girls on Ice participant said, "My instructor opened my eyes to a different realm of art, one that involves adventure and time outdoors." And our third component is that outdoor exploration. This is a great photo of one of our participants from a couple years ago on Girls on Water in Ketchimak Bay. So field scientists and artists have to have the skills to safely navigate the outdoor environments in which they work. So that's why we include this outdoor component, and it's a ton of fun. So like Joanna said, we scaffold our outdoor skills curriculum very intentionally. So in the first few days of the program, it's all about how do we stay warm, how do we stay dry, how do we make sure we're staying fed and hydrated, how do we go to the bathroom in the backcountry, because many of our participants have never camped before. So this is a totally brand new experience for them. And then throughout the expedition, we start practicing more skills, incrementally building up endurance and muscle memory. And by the end of the expedition, there's some sort of physical peak experience. So for Girls on Ice, that might be summiting a nearby peak. For Girls in the Forest or Girls on Water, it might be going on a long distance paddle. And the point of developing all these skills, again, other than it's really fun, is that these skills are necessary for a career in science and art in the outdoors. And again, hearing from our participants, Girls on Ice alum says, "I've always been so sure of my future, but Girls on Ice had made me realize that my plans don't involve a lot of risks. I want to explore the adventurous side of myself more." And another participant from Girls on Water said, "I learned that it's nice to be left alone with my thoughts out in the wild because it's helped me reveal my true priorities in life."
Another thing we're working on quite a lot in Inspiring Girls right now is working to braid in Indigenous knowledge into our curriculum and into everything we do in terms of our programs and our process. And we know that from the research, in order to really truly engage our Indigenous and Alaska Native participants fully, that we sort of have to address this feeling of tension between Indigenous knowledge and the Western science that's taught in schools. And so one of the ways you can do that is to braid those two things together rather than thinking of them as separate. And the research shows that it's a really effective way to encourage Indigenous participants into the science fields. And the other thing too is to make it culturally relevant and personally relevant. And I mean, I would say that's true for everybody pretty much. The more that the science relates to your own life and the way that you live and the way you were brought up, the more interesting it's going to be, the more engaging. And so we're doing several things along those lines in order to braid in Indigenous knowledge. One is that we've all participated in some land acknowledgement training for our instructors and staff, and learned how to incorporate a land acknowledgement, so knowledge of the traditional inhabitants and users of the land where our expeditions take place. And we do that right at the beginning of the expedition to really set the tone and to situate all of the participants and the instructor teams in understanding the history and the usage of the land that they're about to explore. We're also excited that we're doing a collaborative study with the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network. And what we're doing for that is we're going to be interviewing our alumni, and particularly our Alaska Native and Indigenous alumni, and finding out how the expeditions did or maybe did not serve to sort of align with Indigenous ways of knowing and Indigenous ways of life. And I think we'll have a lot to learn from that and a lot that we'll be able to use to improve our programs from here on out. We have some, moving forward into the future, we have some proposed partnerships down the line with tribal entities, including for some of the Chugach tribes where some expeditions take place now and hopefully will take place if our funding continues. And we've also proposed to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator who will have a 9-month role with us, working with Sarah and I, whose most specific task would be to work on this goal of braiding in Indigenous knowledge, or at least finding pathways towards doing that. And the last thing we wanted to cover is to talk about already we've talked about some of the research that's been done in the science education world and in the outdoor education world that has sort of grounded the way that we've designed our programs. And now I'm going to talk about some of the research that we've conducted on the actual outcomes of our programs. So this is social science research that's been carried out interviewing and surveying our past participants to find out about their experience and to see what kind of things that they walked away with. And this study, which was actually led by Dr. Connor, who introduced us earlier, was about looking at how participating in our Girls on Ice expeditions in particular may have influenced the participants' sense of connection with the science community of practice. And the community of practice is essentially a way of saying, like, those who engage in science, those who have the skills and share these sort of similar aspects of being scientists. And the main takeaways from that study that Laura and her team did were to learn that our participants walked away with a greater sense of connection to the science community of practice. And so they felt more strongly that they personally could identify themselves as science people. And that's huge, going back to what we talked about in terms of girls needing to be able to envision themselves as scientists and see that they belong in the science space as being so critical for actually pursuing, a possible career in science. This is a really huge element. And we also learned, or Laura also learned, that the field science elements that were made tacit, so made visible and obvious where they maybe weren't before, helped to grow that sense of science identity, that sense of being a scientist or potentially a scientist down the road. And that included things like field science elements like community leadership. So not just being individually driven and working on your own projects by yourself, but doing so really within a collaborative team, which is very much a part of real field science. And the excitement element of it, as Sarah talked about earlier, like the outdoor aspect and just having a lot of fun out there was a big part of what helped connect participants to science. We also did another study on Girls on Ice programs in particular that showed that participants also had shifts in their environmental identity. So this is a little bit different than science identity. Environmental identity is the concept of how much you feel as a person connected to nature and connected to the natural environment. And that can be based on a number of different things like your personal history, your past experiences in nature, you know, sort of like formative moments that happen in nature and things along those lines. And on the Girls on Ice program in particular, they interact with a climate change impacted glacier landscape. And what we learned was that after interacting with that landscape, that participants had increased sense of relatedness to the environment through better understanding ecosystem linkages. So they better understood how people fit into the landscape and the landscape can affect people and how all of us are intertwined in an ecosystem together and inseparable. We also learned that they felt pro-environmentally motivated after seeing the scale and the rate of change happening in this glacier landscape. And that means being willing to act on behalf of the environment, feeling motivated to do something to serve the environment and protect the environment from, you know, catastrophic change. And so that was a really powerful takeaway as well. And the last piece of research to highlight is actually one that's in press right now and hopefully coming out very shortly. We have an article describing how all of the practices that we've talked about today and some others that we didn't quite get to touch on are purposefully integrated within the way we design the expeditions in order to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the sciences. And so we use a lot of best practices that are grounded in the research in science education, outdoor education, and just education in general. And some of those elements are described here, as you can see. Some we've touched on, such as the tuition-free aspect, application that doesn't focus on grades and academics, making science personally meaningful. A couple of other aspects I'll mention that we didn't get to touch on before are that we did get to touch on that, so I can leave that run right where it is. That we work very hard to have our instructors also trained up on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we work hard to have instructors who can participate in professional development workshops to build up those skills as well.
Great. So we've been Inspiring Girls Expeditions Alaska has been around for 11 years now, but we've got some really exciting plans to be around for the next 11 years and hopefully even beyond. So first, we are, as I think this has been touched on, but we're offering our 3 expeditions this coming summer: Girls on Ice, Girls on Water, and Girls in the Forest. The application for participants is now closed, so we're in the middle of choosing our teams for those expeditions, which we're really excited about. And yeah, looking forward to another really fun-filled summer. As Joanna mentioned, we've also got this collaboration with the Alaska Tribal Resilience Learning Network to better serve our Indigenous participants. That work is ongoing. And some other hopes and plans that Joanna and I have, and the whole Inspiring Girls team has, is hopefully to one day conduct, or maybe not one day, but soon conduct a longitudinal study examining where our participants end up. So we know anecdotally that where some of our participants end up, some of them go into the sciences, some pursue art, some pursue guiding, some become teachers and business leaders in their communities. But we don't know where everyone ends up. And we would like to do a more formal data collection effort to understand how our programs impact our participants 2 years, 5 years, maybe even 10 years down the road. And we're also hoping to develop a longer-term alumni mentorship program, such as maybe a year-long cohort model that would keep our participants engaged for a longer time period. So exciting stuff that we're looking forward to working on. And that's our talk. We want to thank you all so much for coming. Our contact information is here on the screen. And I do also just need to put in a shameless plug. We are participating in the 3rd annual UA Giving Day, 49 Hours for Alaska fundraiser next week. So at the beginning of this presentation, Joanna mentioned that the vast majority of our funding comes from scientific grants, but not all of it comes from scientific grants, and we really rely on individual donors to help make sure that our participants have all the resources they need to participate safely and comfortably in these expeditions. So this year, we have our own individual fund for UA Giving Day. We have a goal to raise $5,000 to put us over the finish line to fund our 2023 expeditions. And we do have 2 anonymous supporters who have issued a $1,000 matching challenge. So the first $1,000 will be matched. So if you are so inclined to support our programs, there's a QR code here. 49 Hours for Alaska is next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Thursday, February 22nd and 23rd. Thank you all so much, and we would be happy to answer questions.
Good. Fabulous presentation about a wonderful program. Just a reminder, if you do need to ask a question, stick your hand up, and I and my colleague, Microphone Fairy over here, will bring a microphone to you. And we are asking that you do have a microphone so our online audience can hear your question. And about the online audience, we have about 50 people online watching, coming from, of course, locally, Fairbanks and Salcha, but also from Michigan, Tacoma, Washington, Winthrop, Washington, and New Orleans. All right, so there we go. All right. Online audience, too, a reminder, you can put your questions in, I think it's the chat and the Facebook, and my colleague Ray will read those out loud, too. All right, there we go.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for the presentation. It's very inspiring indeed. I wanted to ask, what is your, how do you recruit students for these programs? Do you advertise it along this, based on the schools, or like how can you recruit more non-traditional participants as well?
I can take that one. Yeah, that's a great question, and it's very much a multi-pronged approach. We do a lot of different things. We do contact schools and make connections with teachers in particular, and ask teachers if they will individually go to someone in their class and say, I think you should apply for this. I think you would really benefit from it. Having those one-on-one encouragements is actually something we get feedback on, that it's what pushed them over the finish line to get the application in. Rather than just, we do use social media and do lots of advertising in different forums on Facebook and Instagram and everything else. But having somebody go to a participant or an applicant and say, I think you would really benefit from this, is something we hear over and over again, like, oh, my teacher or my mentor said, and that's what really encouraged them. So that's huge. We also give, whenever we have the opportunity, instructors or staff in our community give presentations at schools in different locations all over Alaska. And what else? This year, you can maybe share about the presentation you gave with the tribal, I'm forgetting the name of the exact agency.
Oh, we gave a presentation with the Tribal Resilience Learning Network. So the same folks that we're collaborating with for our evaluation work. Yeah, we also find that we don't have a huge budget to advertise our programs, so we rely a lot on social media. As Joanna said, we have an amazing couple of folks working at the International Arctic Research Center who help us get the word out about our programs. So shout out to Heather and Mike. If I don't know if they're listening, but they're amazing. And we also really rely on word of mouth from our participants to go back to their home communities and say, this was a life-changing experience and all my friends should apply.
Mm-hmm.
Question from our online audience. There's a question from Gretchen. How many applicants do you receive each year?
That's a good question, and it really varies from year to year. Things have been a bit different since the pandemic, I'll say that for sure, that we've noticed a drop in the numbers. We also have a pooled application that is shared with some of our global branches in other places. So actually all of the North American branches are currently sharing a single application platform. And so the number of applications doesn't necessarily represent like the number of applicants who will be eligible for and who we prioritize on the Alaska participation or on the Alaska expeditions. I will say that Alaskan participants have a strong chance of success if they apply. We're always looking for more participants from Alaska, especially from all the different corners of the state that we haven't managed to reach yet. Yeah.
Well, I have the microphone, so I'll ask a question. I wanted to know a little bit more about the art component. What actually, is there an art instructor there? And maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Okay, is this working now?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes, we do. We have an art instructor on every one of our expeditions, and the instructors work together in the planning phases of our expeditions to plan how best to weave art and science together. So, for example, one of our art instructors last year, during one of their planning conversations, our glaciologist instructor was talking about how my memory is not remembering the exact details, but talking about various aspects of like glacial features that she wanted to talk about, and the art instructor was going right along with her saying, okay, yeah, when you talk about this, I'm going to talk about value, and when you talk about this, I'm going to talk about texture and lines and color and all of these terms that I as an artist do not know. But so yeah, we do intentionally weave those components together as much as we can. And we've also been experimenting with other forms of art. So typically it's like a very visual art-based curriculum, lots of sketching, painting, drawing. And this past year, we experimented with cyanotyping, a really old form of printing photography, where on canvas or on cotton fabric and on paper, they've got some sort of chemical on them. You can put shapes on the paper or the fabric and expose them to light, and it turns blue, and then you can see the imprints of these objects. And it was a really, really neat, very popular form of art. So, yeah.
I had a question about the research question. Specifically, you mentioned that they present their findings. I was wondering if they come up with or develop a research question early on in the process, then find data to answer this, or is this something that's a little less structured than that?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. Yeah, so on day 2, 3, 4, early on in the expedition, we encourage all of the participants to write down or talk about all of the questions they have related to the landscape. And then slowly we sort those questions, we group participants together based on their common interests, and then each team works with an instructor to develop their own research project around that question. So, for example, I was an instructor for Girls in the Forest last year, and one of our groups was working on comparing plant diversity in 4 different burn scars along the Chena River. So they come up with a data collection plan. We have to do it really quickly sometimes because we don't have a ton of time on the expedition. But they come up with the question, they come up with their plan, and then when we get all the data back in the classroom, they figure out what it's saying and how to tell other people about it. Yeah.
Well, there's a question way in the back there.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's amazing to have seen this program grow so much since Erin started this in grad school. My question revolves around one thing that makes landscapes powerful to me is stories in the landscape. And that's something, having grown up in Europe, I think the stories are maybe a bit more persistent, and here they're maybe a little bit more lost because we haven't valued native knowledge as much. But it is preserved a little bit in things like native place names and things like that. And I wonder whether you have any plans or whether you're already thinking about that specifically, about how to incorporate stories about landscapes into learning.
I love that question. Yeah, in several ways we are thinking of that. And place names is, I think, one of our, the powerful tools available to us. And I know that at least on the Girls on Ice expedition last year, that place names, Indigenous place names for the region were incorporated into their curriculum. And we usually, try to send the instructor team out with a map of highlights and sort of the translations for those place names so that the whole team can really understand, the story behind the name for that particular place. And we were also really lucky this year on Sarah's Girls in the Forest expedition to have an elder visit at the beginning of the expedition and share a bunch of stories about the area. Maybe you could share a little more about that.
We were very fortunate to welcome Melinda Chase and then an elder throughout our expedition to talk about stories of the Upper Chena and boreal forest landscapes. And it was it came through in the end of program evaluations that was one of the top highlights of the expedition for sure. Yeah.
The goal is to do that for every expedition too. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Hi, I'm Pam Miller. I have first a brief comment about the worldview, the Indigenous worldview and the science worldview overlap, but in the interconnected web of all existence of which we are a part, a more scientific way of saying the interrelations of all our relations. I hope you will work very hard to have Alaska Native instructors as a big part of the program. There's no difference from, it's such a difference. And I'll just recall early on when I came back to Fairbanks after having been a wildlife biologist in the Arctic, I was invited out to Howard Luke's camp on the Tanana River right across from us practically. And that was powerful, just hearing him tell stories about where we're living. And that component, we didn't have to go very far. And hopefully you can build that more in. I guess I have 2 questions, unless there's gaping need for other questions. I wondered how many Native instructors you have had in the program.
This is something we're working hard on, and we're doing our best at intentional, invitations sent out to some of the Alaska Native and Indigenous programs around UAF and locally. And so far, we haven't had much success in finding instructors to date. So it's something we're working on. One of the challenges, I think, is that there are so many skill sets that are kind of inherently required to be an instructor on our expedition, and we recognize this. You know, one of the things is like the knowledge expertise that an instructor would bring, but there's also this risk management component where we're asking all of our instructors to have, for example, wilderness first responder training, which I know a bunch of people in the audience are working on right now. And so the way that we're trying to overcome having our own, you know, application criteria for an instructor position be a barrier is to offer those professional development scholarships that we were talking about for our instructors. So if we were to get someone who has many of the skills, but just not all of them, we can support them in getting those last skills so that they do have all the criteria that we need our instructors to have. So that's one thing we're proud of, but it's like absolutely, we want more Alaska Native representation on our instructor teams, and we currently don't really have it.
And just one of the suggestions, sort of along the lines of the Howard Luke area, he has passed away, so it's a different situation there now. But working with areas on Native land nearby, or where there are projects where you could have a, not so much an expedition type course, but more a course that does have science and Indigenous people, but doesn't require those kinds of things. The pilot, Walter Adi, when I was leaving Kaktovik one time on the Arctic Refuge, I had big duffel bags, massive duffel bags of junk. And he says, why don't you travel like the Nupiaq people? They just bring their toothbrush in their pocket.
All right, we have a question up here, way up here.
Thank you for a great presentation. Question on your model, and are you looking at making any adaptations to your model? And I've seen talked about similar programs like this where they've included teachers with the students. They have the participants go, when they go home, they have need to do so many presentations, and just looking at how you're adapting that, especially going to scale, because this looks like a pretty expensive program. And when we're looking at Fairbanks going through this horrible, trauma of cutting all the schools, just looking at how do you take such a great program to scale, and where's the tipping point for that change with girls? Big question, sorry.
I love it. That's great. I can start and you can jump in if I miss anything. The question of scale is a really good one. Yes, it's an expensive program. What we're going for here is immersion and quality of experience over really broad reach. And so it's a trade-off, right? And that's the approach that this expedition offers, I think, is, the feedback that we get that this was life-changing and transformative and carved and shaped the pathway that people ended up taking after participating. Like that's the kind of feedback we get that tells us that, okay, these immersion programs that are so intimate with 9 participants can be very powerful. I believe that there are other models out there as well.
But can I just add to that? Looking at where's the tipping point. So a 12-day program is as effective as a 6-day program, and just looking at where, finding that magical moment in terms of cost effectiveness, so you can reach out to more girls. And so just looking at, but finding that tipping point.
Yeah, that would be an exercise in some experimental design for sure around our programming. I don't know where that tipping point is. We've experimented a bit with slightly shorter courses, and they haven't had quite the same impact, or maybe they would just need more redesign to squeeze the same amount of value out. We are open to adaptations, and I will say we've adapted and evolved a lot since we started. Even just here in Alaska since 2012, a lot has changed. And we have had teachers as instructors. But they also come to the table with other skill sets, like one of our paddling guides for Girls on Water is also a high school science instructor as well. So just really diverse professional backgrounds. As far as bringing teachers in non-instructing roles, it's not really something that we've explored very much yet. We have some opportunities for interacting with the teams at the beginning, at the end, and on a volunteer basis. So there's certainly room there. But yeah, that's something we haven't explored a lot.
Have another online question from Nuala. Thank you for making something for girls outside. It sounds wonderful. I wonder if there's any room for a rural kid like me who has been homeschooled middle of nowhere without clubs or sports and things in school like my cousins in Anchorage. I've helped my family harvest animals and plants to feed over the winter and help with firewood and chores every day. Do you have any advice for me?
I think that excerpt or that brief story is exactly what we're looking for on our applications. We tell anyone who wants to apply that we value stories so much more than we value a list of accomplishments or experiences. Yeah, so telling a story as beautifully as that was just written is something that will really grab our attention, and I would encourage you to apply next year. And I will also add that we do, as mentioned in the presentation, we do try to seek a diversity of geography where people are coming from, including rural versus urban. And we happily and gladly accept homeschool students onto our programs.
I have another question here.
I hope you don't mind me saying this, Sarah. My name is Sierra. I'm an alumni for the 2019 Girls on Water expedition, and I'm currently going to be on the review board for applicants. And it does say that we need, quote, teacher recommendations, but for someone who is homeschooled, we do accept applicants who don't have all of those recommendations filled. There is room for people with more non-conventional stories. So again, we encourage you to apply.
Thank you, Sierra. And I will just say that we have Sierra and Sage here in the audience who are two of our Girls on Water alumni from 2 different years. And if you want to ask them what their experiences are, please find them after the presentation. You guys want to give a wave? Yeah, awesome, thank you. We're so grateful they came out tonight.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. What other art mediums do you foresee yourself offering, such as like clay molding, carving spoons or masks or baskets, watercolor paintings, like things like that? Like, do you have, like, I know you can't bring a big old block of clay on a boat and pack it up the mountain, but can you tell us your futuristic outlook on that?
Sort of, in as much, I mean, Joanna and I don't really do the curriculum planning for the expeditions. That's really up to our instructors. We leave it to them to decide what they'd like to try. I will say that last year we experimented on one of our expeditions with disposable cameras. Probably all of us in the audience have used disposable cameras out of necessity when we were younger. That was what was available. But many of our participants don't need film cameras or have not used disposable cameras before. So we experimented with doing art projects with 27 shots, right, on a disposable camera. And it was a very cool experiment, except it took like 6 months to get the film developed, and then some of it got lost. And I just got some of the photos back like a month ago. So if we do that again, we're going to have to rethink how we do this. But it really is up to our instructors to try new things, and we're totally open to new experiments and ideas.
I'll add too that sometimes our participants in the field get super creative with found materials around the site. And just like a personal story, when I instructed on Girls on Ice years ago, I was falling asleep hearing this clinking noise and kind of not registering it and wondering what that clinking noise was all about. And in the morning, we woke up and we unzipped our tent and stuck our heads out. And one of the participants had stayed up for hours building these beautiful rock structures out of just the cobbles on the moraine we were camping on. And they were everywhere. As far as the eye could see, all of these, in Canada, we call them inukshuks, but these beautiful rock sculptures just for days. And so I think there's a lot of potential in like the found materials on the landscape, even without, hucking up a giant block of clay. We do find clay on the glacier too, so maybe there's some potential there. But yeah, it really is up to the instructors and what they're excited about, and participants in the same. Yeah.
All right, any other hands up do we see? Oh, one way in the back. My turn to run without falling.
Ask a question in the meantime from our online audience, from Alana. Can you help me understand the time commitment needed from instructors? After seeing the instructor's application, I'm gathering this is a single 12-day trip once per year in Alaska with a rough estimate of 250 hours over the span of 30-ish days.
I can't remember the hours off the top of my head, but Alana, you can absolutely find that information on our website. We have some instructor positions open right now, and we have position descriptions that describe what all the time commitment and responsibilities look like. So inspiringgirls.org, and then you'll find us and find those position descriptions. But it is, there is some preparatory work. There are a few hours here and there sort of from now through until when the expeditions actually take place. So it's spread out.
Is this on? Okay. Hi, my name is Meg, and I'm a student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I've also volunteered with Inspiring Girls in the past, so it's great to be here and listen. I have two questions regarding participation, and I wanted to just acknowledge and respect the need for privacy of the applicants. But this question has to do with disabilities. And my question is twofold. One, I have a question about what are the the aspects of applicants who have applied and not been accepted. Are they allowed to reapply for the program? And then additionally, are applicants who have participated, are they allowed to apply to participate a second time in this program if they've already been accepted? So I guess that's one question in two parts. And the next one is, are there any organizations that IGE has worked with that provide or offer resources for adaptive equipment if there are applicants who maybe have a physical disability or a limitation, but they would still like to participate? And that question also has to do with the COVID pandemic and how there are maybe applicants who have had symptoms from after having COVID. So I just wanted to acknowledge and address that
Yeah, thank you, Meg. To answer your first question, participants who are not selected for expeditions, or applicants who are not selected, if they still fall within the eligibility requirements the following year, so if they're, they apply when they're 16 and don't get accepted, they can apply again next year. And we do give a little boost in the application review for repeat applicants, just to acknowledge that perseverance. And then for repeat participants, this is a one and done program. We want to provide the experience for as many people as possible. So once you've been on an expedition, you're not eligible to reapply. And as for your second question about partnering with adaptive organizations, we don't currently have any partnerships in place like that, but not for lack of wanting to do that. If the need arose, we would certainly explore those options. We have a list on our website and in part of our enrollment forms that's essential eligibility criteria is what we call it. The things that people need to be able to do with or without assistance in order to participate in our programs, and we offer accommodations to make sure that when those essential eligibility criteria are met, and that would include reaching out to partner with adaptive organizations and whatnot.
We do also have disability services here at UAF, so that's probably the first place to go. And then if there's an additional organization needed, then we could take that step as well. But yeah, we have been able to accommodate quite a bit on expeditions just by getting creative, and we're very, very open to conversations during the application process or after the application process with applicants about whether or not it's a good match for them and what we can do to best support them.
All right, any other hands up? Any online? Oh, there's one. I'm getting exercise.
Thank you. Do you ever have any participants that have a tough time adjusting to the outdoors, and how do you help them stay engaged or feel like part of the team?
Sure, yeah, yes, we do. I think at the end of the day, we're asking a lot of participants, you know. It's a new social environment. They're with brand new people, a brand new team of instructors that they're sort of following and leaning on. Brand new team of people from all over Alaska and beyond. They're in a new setting. They're using new equipment. Maybe we have new food because, you know, expedition food is something special and not the most delicious, not always the most nutritious, so we try really hard. So there are a lot of ways that we're sort of encouraging people outside of their comfort zones, I would say. And then of course, add the dimension of a really new landscape. And so the ways that we work on making people feel as comfortable as possible, as early on as possible, is through a lot of, I think, you know, sort of getting to know you activities and building the team dynamic, building the team trust early on, and really focusing in on sort of the social dynamic early, which I think really helps and happens really fast. Team bonding happens pretty quickly, and there are a lot of activities that we do around that. And then as far as making them feel more comfortable in the outdoors specifically, we really build up quite slowly. And so the first night, you know, for Girls on Ice, for example, we don't go out to the glacier on night one. We camp at a lovely farm in town that has a porta potty, you know, and has nice grassy areas for tents, and we learn how to set up tents, but we're still kind of in town. It's very front country feeling. And then the next night is at the trailhead, and then it's the third night when you actually get up onto the glacier. And so it's these slow sort of incremental steps and just really hand-holding and building skills slowly from the get-go, and recognizing that we have folks coming in who've, like Sarah said, never camped before, let alone been on a glacier, never worn hiking boots or a backpack. And some folks have never left home before too, 16 to 18-year-olds, you know, that it could be that this is their first flight. And so there's a lot we do around travel support as well, and making sure that they're scooped up into welcoming arms right away as soon as they get off the plane, and lots of communication with parents and with them along the way. So it's all really thought out as much as we can to be welcoming and supportive. But ultimately, it is pushing people outside of their comfort zone, and I think that's part of the model. You know, right outside the comfort zone is the growth zone, and we're looking for that comfortable space where they're supported and a little bit anxious and nervous to try something new, but not totally out there, so that they can grow. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, two specific things that we do. We dedicate a lot of time to getting to know the participants before they show up and answering all of their questions that they have in the spring. So we establish relationships early so they feel like they can ask us questions, or that's the goal. And then once the teams are in the field, we do daily health checks, which include physical and mental health. So instructors pair up with each participant to check in, and have you gotten enough to eat today? Have you gotten enough to drink today? How's your mood? How are things going for you? How's the expedition? Just to keep tabs on how all of our participants are doing. That grew out of a need to check every day. Hey, do you have any COVID symptoms? But it's morphed into this like bigger check-in that our participants really value, and our instructors do too. It's a great way to understand more about our participants so that we can support early and often when we need to.
Okay, any other hands? Anybody going to make me run up the back? Okay, I think that'll do it. Let's have another round of appreciation for our presenters tonight. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, just a reminder that if you do have questions, you can leave them on the back of your card as you walk out the door here. We hope to see you next week for our presentation, Satellites to Cell Phones, New Ways of Understanding the Aurora, by Doa Ozturk.